I'm here with Master Dring, actually technically Grandmaster Dring now, because you got your ninth degree not too long ago.
Yeah.
But most everybody at the gym knows who you are. We're predominantly going to be talking about Jiu Jitsu today. And so we have so many stories and just so much stuff, and you have so much experience. It's going to be kind of tough to keep it on topic, but my goal is to try to keep it more about Jiu Jitsu today, because we're going to do some striking ones, and we'll come back and we're going to talk about those as well. But as far as BJJ goes, I just wanted you to kind of maybe tell a little bit of your story of how it started and when that evolution kind of got going.
So I guess my going back to one of the old striking coaches, Joe Lewis was actually one of the first people to ever kind of make me contemplate grappling. Because I remember at a seminar, and dare I say the early 80s that I was at, he was like, what are you going to do if a big wrestler shoots at your ankles? You know, and I mean, he gets down and I'm like, hell, I really don't know, you know? So that was, but that incident stuck in my brain. Of course, Joe wrestled through high school. So he is and trained with Gene LaBelle and Gokar. And so he was definitely one of the first people to kind of introduce that concept to grappling. And then one of the guys I was training Muay Thai with, a guy by the name of BJ Johnson out of Springfield, Missouri, there was a guy named Tong Tithra at the Midwest Muay Thai Academy. These guys, old school dudes. Anyway, BJ, I guess through BJ, I want to say, or maybe it might have been Dr. Shell, Michael Shell. I got a hold of a Bart Vale video. And at this time,
Vale?
Bart Vale, this is 88. It was still in the late 80s. That and Bart Vale was doing shoot fighting in Japan. And I can remember, I mean, this might have been 87, 88, somewhere in there. But nobody had ever seen anything like that. I mean, that was pretty underground. If you weren't really like, you know, because when I first started doing Muay Thai, nobody was doing Thai boxing. And I was definitely cross-training before cross-training was cool. There wasn't a lot of people that were going outside their circles, so to speak. So, you know, I mean, I worked out with everybody. I went to a lot of different gyms. I was boxing in boxing gyms. I was, you know, kickboxing. I got into Muay Thai. I was cross-training and stick a knife, you know, doing some Kali, Arnis type stuff. So I was just, man, I just like to train. So
yeah, I was watching Ninja Turtles on TV, watching cartoons. That's what I was doing. So I was trying to train, but you know, I was like 8, so you know, it's all good.
I had that we were discussing the pattern video, the demo that I did in Denton, Texas back in '89, and somebody had to throw up there. A friend of mine's wife said, "Yeah, I was 5 at the time." I said, "I didn't need to know that. I didn't even need to know that at all." But
I've actually got that video. Okay, here, let me share it so that you can see it, so you can kind of tell us what you're seeing here, and then I'm going to click on it so that way everybody else can see it. Okay, so this video, a lot of you guys saw yesterday. Let me click play. So what year was this?
This was December of '89.
December of '89. Okay, yeah. So I was watching Ninja Turtles, and all was good, and you were doing patterns. And then, so when I first watched this, I was like, oh, Dring must be in the background somewhere. This guy right here, I was like, where's Dring gonna pop up? You know, and then I started seeing like it's written on the back of your uniform, and I was like, no way, like this can't be him. I mean, look at this hair, man. I was like, it looks like Tom Selleck and Chuck Norris had a baby. I just couldn't believe it, man. I was like, okay. There's got to be a red Ferrari like out in the parking lot, like right now. Oh man, oh that just made me laugh so hard. I love those old videos, getting to see back in the day, and it was a lot of fun, man. It
Yeah,
really was.
it was. I had a good friend of mine by the name of David Rogers. He's got a school in Denton, Texas, and he had just out of the blue messaged me yesterday. Hey, can I post up a video? And I was like, sure, as long as
Yeah.
it's not negative, haha.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
He posted that up, and I was like, oh, that I had forgot about the Marshall beard. You know, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I hadn't forgot about the Marshall mullet back in the day, but the Marshall beard that was pretty hardcore.
Oh
So
man, it was strong with you.
definitely,
So
definitely.
had you gotten to do any BJJ or see any grappling that was anything legit by that time?
No, so getting back on track with the story. So seeing the Bart Bell video when he was shoot fighting in Japan, and I mean that was when headbutts were legal, and Bart Bell was pretty athletic. I mean, in his prime, he was a scary human being. You know, I mean, talking about a guy's 265 pounds. I saw him. He threw a kick, and the guy grabbed his leg, and he jumped, spin, heel kicks this guy. Well, the guy's holding his leg and just took him out. And somebody else got him down, and it was like, you lock somebody up in their guard and they grab you by the back of your head and then headbutt you into submission. I mean, it's pretty raw, but
Yeah,
it
and
was
I
the
think
first
people forget about that. Like a lot of people I don't think are familiar with what competition looked like during those eras. I'm trying to keep it about BJJ, but we'll get on that tangent later. But yeah, it definitely was a lot more serious than a lot of people remember.
yeah, there was Valley Tudo. So the early stuff wasn't anything like BJJ or MMA as we know it today. It was Valley Tudo, anything goes. And it wasn't anything goes. There were still a lot of rules, but it was a lot more liberal.
Yeah.
So but that was introduction to some kind of groundwork. And then the Gracie Challenge was starting to kind of be out there a little bit, reading about the Gracie family and there's an article in Playboy, there was an article here, an article there, and you kind of hearing the Horian was starting to kind of make some waves about the Gracie family. He did the fight choreography for that Lethal Weapon movie.
Yeah. What was that? Was that 89?
Yes. It was about 89. So then fast forward December, it was either December of 90 or January of 91. And I remember New Year's, and I just can't remember which side of New Year's it was on.
Yeah.
There was a guy by the name of Gene Cunningham did Gene Cunningham was in Conway, Arkansas. He was a preacher at a church. And I was would go up some Sundays. They had a group that were doing some Thai boxing and some stick fighting and stuff. And every once in a while I was going up and working out with those guys, kind of helping them out. They're just good guys. And Gene I knew through BJ Johnson out of Springfield. So Gene actually had wrestled, and he brought Horian and Hoist in to do a seminar. So my first seminar was with Horian and Hoist. Horian taught the seminar. Hoist was just the kids leaning up against the wall.
You know what? I had that picture. Let me see if I've got that picture. I think I might have a picture of you and Horian. Actually from that seminar. Let me see here. Let me see if this looks familiar to you. Because I think you have that picture. Yeah, that was Henzo and Hoist. Yeah, that was a different one. So, yeah, because I thought you had that picture up, I think, at your school from that first seminar, right?
No, I don't know.
Not that one. Okay.
So,
that must have been a different one.
Hoist, at that time, Hoist was this was almost 3 years before the first UFC. So nobody knew anything. It was crazy. If you weren't pretty tuned in, you didn't know anything about the Gracie Challenge. It was pretty low key, but it was great. I did like everybody. I grabbed hold of Hoist and got him to roll with me. And it was funny. I ran into Hoist at a Bellator there was a couple other seminars I went to. I chased him and went to several seminars that he taught over the years, but I hadn't seen him in years and ran into him at Bellator, and he immediately remembered that seminar in Conway, Arkansas, because that was early days. You know, I mean, they were nowhere near the popularity or anything. I mean, they were trying to make their way in the U.S. And so,
how many people were you think were at that seminar?
Probably 40 or 50, about 40.
Oh,
40
wow. That's a lot of people.
There was.
Yeah, that's surprising.
It was fairly well attended. It was a 2-day event. It was a good seminar. It's funny. Yeah. I still remember. There's still things that I remember from that seminar, still things that I do. You know, I mean, just fundamental old school jiu-jitsu. And jiu-jitsu of the day was not about – it was all self-defense and Valley Tudo. It was it was no holds barred type stuff. It was self-defense type stuff. It wasn't exactly what we're doing today, you know. Now, certain key elements, of course, but it was
for sure. Yeah, fundamentals were there. You know, it kind of reminds me of whenever you had Shaolin come in, and we were all a bunch of white belts. I was a blue belt, and I was like the highest rank there. And he was trying to teach a single leg, and he was so bored, like, oh man, you guys don't know anything. And I'm assuming it was probably like that when the Gracies came in, because it was just a bunch of karate guys.
Yeah, there was. And especially in Arkansas, because back then there was no wrestling in the state.
Yeah.
Nobody had any, you know, there was very little. I think the School for the Blind in Little Rock had a little bit of a wrestling program. There was a little bit of judo. Those guys did a little bit. Larry Hartzell from the JKD guys did a little bit.
Yeah.
There was a couple of guys down in South Arkansas that I knew that did a little grappling. There was Max Bishop up around Paragould that was doing some grappling.
He's one of the OGs.
And I was doing some grappling, and that was about it. You know, there wasn't at that time, there just wasn't a lot of people anywhere, you know, that was doing anything.
Do you have a memory of like the first time that you saw jiu-jitsu like work, when you were like, man, that's the real deal? Was it when you were at the UFC fights? I mean, because you were at like one of the original UFC fights, or was it like maybe at a seminar type thing? Like, do you have a definitive thing when you were like,
it would have been when I was at that seminar with Horian and Hoyce, because I can remember snagging up Hoyce, and because it's like we rolled, and I rolled with them repetitively, and he just shrugged out of everything I had. And at this time, I was pretty established. I mean, I was competing internationally. I kickboxed on ESPN. I was traveling the country. Literally, had traveled the world fighting. I was vested, you know. And I mean, I'm competing on several different circuits, and I snagged this guy up and put him in what I thought was my best hold, and he wiggled out of it and tapped me. And I was like, I did what everybody does. Hey, can we do that again?
Yeah.
And we did it again, and then we did it again, and then we did it again. And then I realized, you know, shit, there's a whole new world here. And it's funny because it had been I'd probably been training with Burl Parsons in Japanese jiu-jitsu for maybe not even a year, maybe a year. And we did a little groundwork. Burl, you know, had a black belt in judo, and was a third or fourth degree in judo. So he had us doing some groundwork, but it was very rudimentary. I mean, it was, you know, I mean, it wasn't much. It wasn't very, very technical, but, you know, we did a little bit. That wasn't his deal that he wanted us doing.
Yeah. So, and in those days, like, you know, there wasn't a lot of styles that encompassed multiple ranges of combat. And the ones that did, like you said, it was very cursory. That was like, if you end up here, you already messed up, you know, because it was just based on this, you know, old archaic idea of battle and warfare almost, you know, but it was not, it just wasn't as engulfed as it is today.
No, it really wasn't. And then once I got that first taste of it at that seminar, I knew, okay, I've got to learn more about it. And so we were going back to the gym, and I mean, I took it back. So fight nights, every Wednesday night was fight night in my gym. It still is. We man, we would go to the ground. I mean, I started triangle choking people and arm barring people. And I mean,
Look what I just learned. Check this out.
Oh yeah. I mean, we were tackling each other on the ground and getting on each other and not knowing, I mean, I had no mats back then. It was just, I mean, the floor.
Hardwood floors. Yeah.
Carpeted floors, really gross.
Which is, I mean, that's what, like, right now with a lot of our kids and students, stuck at home and everybody's bored. And so a lot of them been doing drills, and now they're back to, like, they're on hardwood floors, thin carpet. And it's so funny. I've had a few people comment. They're like, man, I've really been thinking about BJJ lately. And, like, that hard floor I played with last night on some drills, like, that was different. That was rough. And it just makes me think of you, because you always talk about, martial arts on multiple platforms, whether it's like in the street, in the ring, on the training floor, gravel, grass, circumstances, light, dark streets. And it just made me think about that a lot.
Oh, dude. I can remember doing a demonstration at Wild River Country when it first opened. That's a water park here in North Little Rock.
Yeah.
And the guy that I took, I was doing sweeps, takedowns, and throws on concrete with no pads. No pads.
Oh,
so
man.
tucking your chin and break falling meant a lot. Like, it was really, really important that you do that.
Well, I mean, when you gave me my brown belt, you threw me at that dinner, and that was on hard floor. And I was like, good. I don't even remember. That was maybe 11 or something. But, yeah, I remember that one. But we had some carpet. It wasn't quite concrete. I had some carpet. But I remember that day vividly, because I was like, oh, crap, we're going. Yeah. This is happening.
It's airborne. Yeah, that was it. It's funny looking back to how difficult it was to find information, because we didn't have the internet. You didn't have this. I mean, no, there was no video chatting. There was, it was difficult at that time to even get fundamental grappling on a VHS tape. I mean, It just was really, really difficult. So, you went to seminars. I would seek out, find anybody that had any kind of ground experience. In Arkansas, without wrestling, I mean, we were a wasteland for any kind of ground fighting kind of stuff. So that was difficult. Then the UFC hit, and it got better a little bit in that. Yeah. There were more people were trying to capitalize on what Hoist did. And I was like, hey, man, I rolled with that guy. I mean?
Yeah, I know him.
Like, hey, I know him. I rolled with him. So we were already a little bit ahead of the curve. I mean, that was the thing. I was doing Muay Thai before Muay Thai was cool. I got to do Jiu Jitsu before Jiu Jitsu was cool. And that really helped posture me. It was great. Well, fast forward, I remember, I guess it was UFC 4 in Tulsa. Yeah. I had a guy that had been training with Helson. He was a Navy SEAL, friend of mine. He had done a few workouts with me. He was actually from Batesville. And we had been in the gym a bunch of times with me before he went into the SEALs. And then gets out of the SEALs, comes in and works out, and he'd been training with Helson. And so we'd roll. Now, this guy you could catch him. Like, I mean, he could be submitted, but he would never get tired. Like, his idea of condition was, he'd run 10 miles, swim 1 mile, and then go do PT with the teams. This guy had the most incredible cardio of any human I'd ever met. So it wasn't like rolling with him like he was ever going to get tired. And what we did was, I look back at it and thinking back at it now, and it's going to look that had to look nothing like what I consider to be jiu-jitsu.
It's one of those, like, you hope it's not on film.
Oh, yeah. No, I hope any of those, because when we grappled each other, it was game on. I mean, he had that Navy SEAL attitude, brother. I mean, we and it was, pressure pointing, and we didn't know what we were doing. We just were enthusiastic. So what
that's
we did,
the word.
We did with a lot of enthusiasm. But he said, hey, man, Helson's doing a seminar before UFC 4 in Tulsa. You want to go? I was like, of course. So got to go. We jumped in the car, drove to Tulsa. And it wasn't just Helson. It was the entire Gracie clan. I mean, they were all there, supporting. And Elio was there, which was really cool because he got down on the mat. I can't remember if I was jacking up or Jeff Wheeler was the guy's name that I was with. I can't remember if it was Jeff was jacking something up or I was jacking something up, but Elio got down and choked on me, and I'm like, and it was like being choked by Skeletor at that time because he was, he was in his 90s then. It was.
Yeah, because, he was, I want to say, because, like, his 100th birthday was, wasn't that right around? I'd have to check. It was late 90s, early 2000s. Because he was in his 90s in the 90s. I was talking to Toffer, and he had mentioned something about his 99th birthday, and I want to say that was in the late 90s or something. But
well, this would have been like 94. 90.
Okay, so he
94.
would have been a little, but he still would have been in his 90s, though.
Oh, he was definitely in his 90s. Parchment thin skin, and he was elderly at that time. But it was just cool to say I was on the mat with Elio Gracie.
Sure.
I thought that was really cool. But the thing is, by about UFC 4, you were starting to get more Brazilians in the United States. There was Pride was kicking off just a little bit. So I was able to hook up through a friend of mine, a guy by the name of Scott House that is in the Memphis area now. But Scott was traveling and going to a lot of those early UFCs and had run into Alan Goes. And so that's how I got hooked up with Alan Goes, is actually through Scott House. And Alan, was fighting in Pride, and we brought him in. I was bringing him in, hosting him seminars here at my gym. I flew out to California and worked out with him. I was starting to have some hip issues. This would have been probably about 95, 95, 96. And I was starting to have 96, 96, maybe 97, 96. I was having, no, it'd have to be 95, 96, that time frame. And I was having some hip issues, and there was a doctor out in California I flew out to work with, trying to avoid, some of the surgeries I ultimately ended up having to have. But went out there and I would do workouts. I got to spend the night at Joe Moreira's house. He was a friend of Alan Goes. Joe Moreira was.
Yeah, that's cool. That was a name back in the day. I hadn't heard that name in a long time.
Oh yeah, Joe Moreira. That's why I call it, instead of shrimping, I call it the Brazilian snaky move.
Yeah.
Doing a seminar, doing a private lesson with Joe Moreira, and training with Joe was huge, and he was so gracious. He didn't know us from Hogan's Goat, and invited us into his home, and allowed us to train with them. We went out to one of his schools in Palm Springs, I believe. He did a seminar out there and worked out at his gym. And he had, a lot of big name guys at that time. The early UFC fighters were training with Joe. And of course, Joe fought in the UFC as well. So that was really, really cool. Training with Alan Goes was really great. I really liked Alan. He always treated me like a king.
He was one of the first ones. Didn't he have like a DVD it wouldn't have been DVDs. He had a VHS series pretty early, didn't he? I thought he made some videos. Maybe it was just a couple. I could have swore that maybe that was in the 2000s, but I just remember early on, whenever I was looking for jiu-jitsu information, I remember seeing some videos that he had done, or maybe he was a part of. Because there was a bunch of people doing it, in the early 2000s. But I thought that I remembered his. And usually I'd check it, but I'm using the phone to do all this other stuff. But I feel like I can remember him.
96, 95, 96. There weren't a lot of videos out.
No, this would have been early 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was early 2000s that I just remember seeing his name.
But Alan was he was a good guy. It's just he disappeared. He actually, so Alan, we I flew out. We'd go out. I mean, I was doing fundraisers. I also worked out at this time because I was teaching at a camp called the Karate College.
Mm-hmm.
And through my connections with Joe Lewis, Joe had invited me to teach at that camp. And the Karate College goes on to this day, and it's one of the largest martial art camps. I mean, you know, one of the big martial art camp. And they would have all kinds. Well, Gene Gokarchevichian was training there a lot. And
Sparks got to train with him back when he was a traveling nurse. He had a lot of time with the Gokar.
Yeah. Oh, Gokar is awesome. And Gene LaBelle, I got to work out. I went out, you know, I'd go to California. I worked out. I did privates flew out there a couple of times just to work out with Gokar and Gene LaBelle. I mean, it was private lessons or seminars or class time, but it was really, it was awesome to get to train with those guys. I mean, and Gokar was hardcore, you know, back in the day. I mean, still is. I mean, he's a phenomenal martial artist. So I was proud to be exposed to those guys. They were really awesome. Then, but Alan, I really enjoyed my work with Alan Goes and would train. I mean, he at this time, I mean, he didn't even have a gym. You know, we'd work out in his garage. He had some mats in his garage. You know, and it was hot. You know, so it was
California in a garage. Yeah, I'm sure that was toasty.
Yeah, not a lot of air. So that was interesting. I can still remember the first time he showed me the spider guard, and it just blew my mind. I was like, oh. What is this gi wizardry? What kind of black dark art do you propose here? And Alan ended up opening up a school in Newport Beach out there, and hired a guy by the name of Tony Emanuel. Tony had been working in Vegas at John Lewis's school, and of course. Was a Novignon guy. Alan Goes was a Carlson Gracie black belt. Andre Pederneiras was a Carlson Gracie black belt. So all paths kind of led back to Carlson. And so, you know, when you look at the lineage, you know, I mean, it's pretty cool because that's definitely that path. Mieta, Carlos, Carlson, Andre, and even Alan Goes and Andre would have been parallel under Carlson, and then Tony, and then me. So it was interesting how that line stayed the same. But I ended up Alan sent Tony to Arkansas to promote. There was a few of us at that time, and by the time I got my blue belt, I'd been, rolling and grappling and cross training for 6 years, or longer. So that was interesting. But then Alan went back to Brazil and disappeared. And it's difficult to train with somebody you can't find, and Tony stayed in Arkansas. He went back to California. Then we brought him back to Arkansas, and I ended up talking him into doing MMA. And I've been training kickboxers and boxers and kickboxers forever.
There's a bunch of MMA stories with Tony, but we'll save those for another time.
Oh yeah, I mean they're awesome.
You got to go on the Brazil trip to get those stories.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it was good. It was really symbiotic because I was able to push him with his stand-up and train him. And he had done prior to getting into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, had done some Shotokan, I believe, in Brazil, had done some karate, had done some stand-up. But no, definitely we were a striking coach, introduced him some Thai concepts, and so we push him standing up, and then he would push us on the ground. And it was sometimes scary training Tony because he was like, if you hit me again, I'm going to pop your arm. I'm like, hey, come on.
He's very
man.
capable.
Yeah,
he's very capable.
It was challenging, but it was awesome. There were good times. I mean, he would get a videotape, man. We would watch. And when Tony was living with me, I mean, he was back and forth from between California and Arkansas. Would come and stay sometime.
Wasn't he working with BJ Penn?
BJ did some private lessons with Tony.
Yeah, I knew they crossed paths a little bit.
Yeah, and actually Tony said he was the one that convinced Andre to give BJ his black belt to compete in the Mundials the year that BJ won the Mundials. And it was like, hey, you know, that's not a stacked division. He can win it this year. He needs to be in that division. And that's another story. I mean, but Tony was instrumental in that. And you got to figure, man, when Tony was, I mean, at this point in time, 96, in 96 or 97, 96, I believe. They're just, 96, 97, there just weren't. I mean, to be a brown belt in America, you were like a god. You know, I mean, there were no brown belts. I mean, it was crazy. And then he got his black belt presented to him by Alan Carlson. Carlson Gracie actually presented Tony's black belt. And then
that's cool.
He kind of asked for Andre's. Tony's very loyal and had asked for Andre's blessing. I mean, I had Andre, you know, it was interesting back in the day, you know, a lot of the early guys came through my gym. I had Andre Pederneiras at my house several times.
Well, I mean, there's actually articles published that talks about No Vignale starting, and it started in Las Vegas and Arkansas. You know, like they give the credit. They don't mention all the schools and the names, but, you know, because it's old stories, stuff like that. But they give it credit that we're like No Vignale spread through those two cities. And
we were actually the third. Shiruto was out in Hawaii. So John Lewis was first, and then Shiruto, and then Tony Emanuel at my gym. So we were technically the third No Vignale school in the United States. And at the time I got my black belt, I went down and spent 2 weeks in Brazil just getting.
So when was this? Because, I mean, that was a really good story that I wanted to touch on, was when you went to Brazil for the first time.
Yeah, that was in October 2001, which was interesting because that was right after 9/11. And we went down and I spent, you talk about rolling like hard 3 times a day. I mean, we were there early in the morning, and we go back at lunch, and we go back in the evening. And
that's their summertime, so it's cooking.
Oh yeah, it was.
We always go during the winter, and we're all dying in the winter down there. That's like
it was hot. It was hot, dude, and I was the oldest guy. Even at that time, you know, I was the oldest guy on the mat by 10 years. I was older than Andre. I was older than everybody else, and you know, I mean, It was pretty rad. You know, wonderful memories just in watching. You know, Amaury Batech, and there was. I mean, just the old school, old name guys that were there that were training. Shaolin, you know, was when I first met Shaolin, was there.
I actually talked to him yesterday.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah. He's hanging out with the kids, doing jiu-jitsu with them at home because he's stuck too. He's bored. Yeah.
That guy likes to train. He trains really hard. He came to the gym one time, and we took him. You know, we were doing seminars, and I got him up early in the morning, made him go run bleachers with me, and then brought him back to the gym, and we did kettlebells, and then we went down to Hot Springs and did a seminar. Abby and Jory Malone at that time had a club in Hot Springs, and we did a seminar at their school. And then I took him to my friend Bob Edmonds' house, and we played paintball. And we show up about 11 o'clock at night, 10:30, quarter to 11, and we played paintball until 1 o'clock in the morning. And he looked at me as we were leaving and goes, "Man, you are crazy. You're crazy." So I figure, well, my jiu-jitsu doesn't compare quite with Shaolin's, but my enthusiasm was par for the course. So it was definitely a good time. Definitely a good time.
I mean, that reminds me of a story of so how I first met you. So there's 3 parts of this story. There's legend, there's stupidity, and then there's truth. So the legend part was around Arkansas, because I'd been training and traveling, you know, these UFC guys, and just going wherever I could to try to get better. And the legend was like, man, if you show up to Drings, like, man, he's going to beat you down. Like, his team is just going to thrash you. You take a fight on his show, like, it's going to be the worst experience of your life because it's so hardcore. But at this point, like, I had nobody else to train with, and I was like, I needed higher level talent. So then my stupidity of, like, I was the stupidity part. I'm all like, yeah, man, well, I'm the sign the waiver guy, you know, I'll train and fight with anybody at this time, which I still look back and I'm just so thankful that nobody that knew what they were doing was hanging around Clarksville, Arkansas, because they would have just beat the brakes right off of me. So then I showed up to your place, and I met you at some fights first, because one of your students I had met through somebody, and I remember showing up for Saturday class, and it was like, okay, let's train, and we jumped rope, and I was like, oh yeah, man, I do like 3-minute rounds and all this, and then we kept jumping rope, and then we kept jumping rope, and I like found the clock, and I was like, man, it's been like 20 minutes, and we're still jumping rope. Did this guy forget about us? And then we did probably no less than 40 minutes of drills. Like, and these weren't like pitter-patter drills. I mean, these were hard drills. I thought this was the training. I was like, oh, this is awesome. We're working so hard. And then you're like, okay, we're loose. Let's go ahead and start rolling. And I was like, rolling, what? And I remember my first roll with you is I was like, okay, let's go. And you snapped me into a wrist lock and like rolled me twice. And I was so dumbfounded. I was just like, I didn't even remember to tap. And you were like, are you going to tap? And it was just so terrible. And then after all of this, you're like, all right, put on the gear, let's spar. And I mean, it was like one of the hardest workouts of my entire life. And I got the brakes beat off me. But the truth was, you guys were just so ahead of the curve. Like, you were just so ahead of the curve of the BJJ and the striking and just blending it together. And I can just remember, like, in that moment, like, I just knew, because I'd been training with some high-level guys, and the integration was what I had not seen before. And I knew right then, I was like, man, this is the golden ticket, because the integration of the boxing, kickboxing, the wrestling, jiu-jitsu, like, and I was hooked. But it was a funny story, because I was so pumped up driving down, and my adrenaline dump hit at like Conway, and I was like, man, I sure am tired, because, you know, in my head, I was already training, and I was like, I'm not even there yet. But it definitely, you know, was a funny turning point for me in my career, for sure.
Yeah, that good times. Hang on 1 second.
Yeah. Somebody calling you.
Hello, my name is Danielle Casey. I was interested in your concealed carry class.
Oh yeah. Still doing firearms training, concealed carries, and keeping your stuff sharp.
Yeah.
Which reminds me of another story when we went to Georgia one time. We'll do that one another time, though. But when we went shooting with those guys in Atlanta, I think maybe. What was that?
No,
Russell?
that was Alabama.
Alabama, yeah. Somewhere
Yeah.
You drugged me to. Yeah. But that'll be another
we
story.
Down to Alabama. I'll
yeah.
Shocked to actually get a telephone call. Actually, I think right now the Arkansas State Police has shut down taking any concealed carry applications due to the COVID kind of issue. But we'll reach back out to her after we get done.
So back to Brazil.
That was interesting, because after the wrist lock, I think we did just do some regular rolling for a while.
For sure. Like, it got more normal. I mean, I still got choked like more times than I knew what to do. And like every time I went to another person, it was somebody wearing like a legit rash guard, you know, not like the spandex shirts you buy from Walmart, you know, like that says jiu-jitsu on it. This guy probably knows something. And it was just like thrash. But everybody was really like, when you're there to train, it wasn't an issue. And that was like where I say, like, the legend of, you know, you back in the day was skewed because people weren't into training at that level. And that was the biggest thing that I noticed, was just the training was just legit. And if you were there to work, man, you were taken care of, and you were going to get bumps and bruises. So like the training we do now seems normal because you were just ahead of the curve, you know, just stepping out of that smoke and mirrors stuff of like, you know, like we don't really hit each other. We don't really take each other down. Like, you know, it was definitely a breath of fresh air for me.
Well, you kept showing up, and that was the biggest thing, because back then, I can't tell you the number of people that would show up
Yeah.
And I never saw them again. Or they'd come in and do one or two classes. And then, you kept coming back. And then started realizing, hey, and that I can I specifically remember a really altering conversation where we were talking, and because you were doing a lot of traveling. And
I was the nomad,
Yeah.
I mean, and for weird reasons, just some people in my past that I was just like, I'm just after the truth. I'm just hardcore after the truth.
And then we kind of had a discussion of, well, if you're not going to invest in anybody, why should anybody invest in you? And it comes down to, I mean, who you're going to hitch your wagon with, because ultimately there's lots and lots of good people, but those same good people have got folks that are invested in them and are helping to support them and sharing their vision. And it's like, if you just come in, then, I mean, it's nice. And there's some people feel like, oh, jiu-jitsu's for everybody. I mean, there's people, but when we're talking, and I remember having to do fundraisers so I could go out to California and train with those guys, because as I mean, I was pretty hardcore back in the day and didn't have a lot of money, and kind of hardcore now and still don't have a lot of money. But, back then to get to go out and do a seminar was, I mean, I would do lock-ins with the kids, or we would do car washes. We would do seminars. I would do fundraisers so that I could actually go to California and train with these guys. The same thing. I mean, to be able to go to Brazil and test, to do to bring and have guys live with me for extended periods of time where I was responsible. They didn't have vehicles, I mean.
They don't speak the language. Oh man, that's
Paulo Ibero, he didn't drive. I had, Tony didn't drive. And I mean, I was driving them around, and I was trying to create income for them by doing seminars. That was money that was not going in my pocket. It was to help those guys out. And so I invested. And then somebody comes up and goes, well, you should just give that to me for free. And I'm like, no. I mean, when you share a vision, and there's now, I mean, and especially back then when you didn't have, it wasn't like, I can't keep up with the jiu-jitsu that shows up in my email inbox. I mean, there's just non-stop black belts everywhere, and information, and with a click of a button, and pick up my cell phone and I can watch more video, more techniques than what I could have. So back then it was a lot more difficult. And it came at great cost and great expense and a lot of personal suffering, I mean, I got wore out, back in the day. So once we kind of had that, it was like, and it was funny.
You kind of went on that operating system discussion too, because something I'd never even thought about was like, Kaleb, all these people have all this information, but nobody's trying to plug it all into an operating system that was like synergistic. Like, that was when I just never even crossed my mind. It was like, oh man, and it gave me some clarity, because so Randy Couture, when I was up at Team Quest, and actually talked to him like a few days ago too, because he's locked down in Vegas, and I remembered something he'd said when I was up there training with those guys on Fight Team, is he was like, Kaleb, quit trying to do what we're doing. You need to find some of these things that fit what you're already doing. And I didn't even hear him. At this time I'm just like, what? I was just doing drills. And then whenever you kind of line that out of like that operating system, theory that you talked to me about, that was a major turning point, because it was like, it's not so much all the information, it's how the information fits together.
Yeah. Seamless integration is huge, because if it doesn't run, and let's face it, let's like using an automobile analogy, right? There's a lot of fast cars out there. I mean, a lot of great cars, but if you get the front end of a Lamborghini and the rear end of a Porsche and, something from a Ferrari, you could have all these high-speed car parts that do not run. They don't fit. They don't match. And so being careful where you get your information from. So it's having a sense of seamless integration. You've got to make sure that you know, everything is gonna match up and is actually going to run. I talk about computers a lot of times, you know.
Yeah.
If your operating system, like I just had to buy a brand new iPad to do some video analysis for a guy down in Texas, and he had sent me some updated software, and my old iPad wouldn't run it. I mean, so the hardware wouldn't match the software, right?
Yeah.
So I look at it in terms of your hardware is going to be your physical self. Like you can have technical knowledge, you can have a ton of knowledge. That doesn't mean you're going to have the ability or even maybe the skill to make it work. Skill, knowledge, and ability are actually all three separate things. So you have to constantly be worrying about your hardware, which is going to be strength, cardiovascular conditioning, flexibility, and to a lesser extent, nutrition, hydration, rest, right? So it's kind of that physical self. Then you have what I call read-only and random access, right? So my footwork is my footwork is my footwork. That transcends style fundamentally.
Yeah.
Whether I'm shooting a gun and I'm moving and shooting, I'm stick fighting, I'm knife fighting. Now there may be, you know, some little pull down menu options in my footwork that in this particular situation, I'm going to do this. You know, I'm going to angle like this. I'm going to cut like this because he's got a stick or he's got a knife.
And that was one thing like that you used to illustrate with me, like the footwork was a big piece because I stood differently for when we were doing different drills. And you're like, Caleb, what are you going to do in a fight? You're going to go in there and be like, oh, we're boxing now and standing. And I remember just looking at you like, I don't know. I just never thought of it. You know, I was so dumb.
Well,
but I was a cage fighter and I was really tough. Oh.
Yeah, you know, but you were going out and seeking out knowledge, and there's an old saying, you know, when the student is ready, the instructor appears. And throughout my career, I've been blessed to have good instructors appear before me, and I, you know, much like you, I made it my business to seek out good people. I mean, you've not been scared to travel, and I drug you along when I said, hey,
absolutely,
we're going to train with Joe Lewis. You jumped in the car and we went and trained with Joe Lewis. When I said, hey, we're going to go, you know, train with this guy. We're going to go train with that guy. You were always down, you know. I mean, hey, we're going to Brazil, you know.
Which, okay, so this brings up,
Brazil.
I got to tell another story. So the Dring experience, because people hear this whenever you're at rank review. So I'm going to like get the record straight so you guys all know what the Dring experience is. So when I showed up, you know, Dring's like, hey, man, you do your part. I guarantee you I'll do mine. Be here next Friday, and we're going to drive who knows where. So I show up on Friday thinking, yeah, you know, we'll make a trip. We'll go to dinner. We'll find a hotel. No, we, like, drive all night until, like, 1 or 2 in the morning, and we didn't stop anywhere. There was jerky and whatever you could find to drink in the truck. And so we show up, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, we train tomorrow afternoon? He's like, no, we got to get up at 7 because the thing starts at 8 and we got to get a morning workout in. And I was like, okay, what do we do for breakfast? He's like, well, we got jerky. We're good. So we would go for like days and there would be no sleep, no food. Like I can remember just being so tired and so hungry and like, what are we doing? It was just so terrible. And now it's funny because roles have reversed a little bit where now I'm like running a little bit late. Oh no, we'll eat later. But man, like that put me to the test because it was like, you're out there training hard like a maniac with strangers. I show up with Dring, so immediately you're the target, like, oh, this guy must know something. And just all these strangers trying to beat me to death. And you're like, well, here, Caleb, just go out and, you know, and I'm just like been eating jerky for 2 days and sipping on what water I found in this bottle. It was terrible.
Protein, good protein, kept you hydrated. But those are memories that you'll never forget. And
yeah, good
it's so funny because now, you know, I've still kind of run pretty hard. Right before we came on, I went up and ran up to get a snack, and they had my favorite kind of jerky. And I thought, you know, it's fitting that I'm buying jerky before we do this video.
Yeah, just the stories.
Lean protein, it's a healthy snack, and who knows, you know, gotta have it.
Yeah, I definitely never had issues making weight. That's for sure, man. So now it goes to Brazil, like our first trip to Brazil, which is always a funny story because you'd went to Brazil before 2008. How many times did you had gone before I went with you?
2 or 3, I think.
Yeah.
I know,
It was,
because I went in 2001, and then I didn't go back for a couple of years. And then I'd been to Maceo to see Tony
yeah.
once or twice. So I'd been to Brazil 2, maybe 3 times, because we went down there. It was 2008 when we went to Fortaleza.
Yeah. Because we went down there with Hobson, you know, and I was just so excited, you know, and Tony was there. We were going to train and all this. And the first 3 days were awesome, you know, because we had that beautiful house on the beach. We had the mats downstairs. There was food everywhere. I remember on the 3rd day, I don't even remember who it was, but they're like, hey, so we're out of food that we had bought for the entire week for you guys. So we got to come up with a plan. And we were like, what do you mean you're out of food? Because, I mean, you know, you got a bunch of guys training and they're cooking food for us and we're just blowing through it. So that was the first sign when it was like, man, this is weird. You know, this is interesting. And then my favorite memory was whenever we were all in that little car. It was later at night. And it was like, hey, we're going to go down to this place, you know, there's some dancing or something. And we're driving through town. And I remember we're all piled in this car, way too many people. And there's these cops sitting in the middle of this intersection. And we were going way too fast, too. This was like a Yugo with like 8 Americans in it. And, you know, some of our Brazilian friends were driving. And we go, and he starts cutting a U-turn around these cops and screaming at him. I got no idea what he's saying. And all I'm thinking, I'm hanging in, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to end up in Brazilian jail. Like, that's all. I was so scared, man. I was like, this is going wrong in so many ways. Oh, it was so crazy. But
what was funny to me about that trip is that we had the mats spread out in the garage that we were working out in, and at night they were pulling the car in and parking the car over the mats, you know? And I'm like, this can't be sanitary.
It was hardcore. I forgot about that. Yeah, because the mats, they were in the garage. Man, that was wild, you know. But, you know, that beach, I remember I was telling the story to this guy. I was like, man, I remember the first trip to Brazil. The water was so warm, you know, and you could stand in at chest level. And then the swells would come in and raise you like 15, 20 feet. It was so awesome. And I remember telling him, yeah, man, I just want to go back to Fortaleza. And he was like, wait a minute, Fortaleza, Brazil? I was like, yeah. And he's like, dude, that's on Shark Week. He's like, they have more shark attacks than like anywhere else. And I was thinking back and I was like, you know, there wasn't a ton of people in the water, you know? And so I Googled it and it was legit. And I'm so glad I didn't know beforehand because I would have been scared to death. But I was out there just living it up like, man, this water is just so nice, you know? And, oh, man. Yeah. It was a good time. Yeah, it was a good time. I remember those dune buggies when we went out on the sand dunes. That was really cool.
Yeah, that was those. And again, I don't think OSHA, there was no safety codes.
No.
We're driving around, all of a sudden just go straight down this sand dune that's as close to 90 degrees that I've ever been in. And I'm standing up, hanging on to the bar, and I remember thinking, man, that we're going straight down, you know? Please, God, don't let this thing roll.
So I've got a picture. I got a picture from them. Let me click share my screen. I got a picture of whenever we went down there.
Oh, that's Hobson.
Yeah, that was you and Hobson. Let me zoom that thing up so you can actually see it. Because y'all did sidekicks. What's so funny is he was standing on the sand mound to get it to work. But yeah, it was. I mean, some of these are on Facebook, but. Yeah, that was a cool trip because, man, you were so sunburnt. That's what I remembered big time from that trip was just like you were so sunburnt, which you're not really built for the sun anyway.
No.
Yeah, that was
right angle in the sun. I'm almost translucent.
Oh yeah, man. That was such a good trip for me though. Like, because I mean, you always told me you were like, man, you don't understand how it's going to affect your training and like I mean, the level of jiu-jitsu down there. I mean, that definitely affected me because there was all these black belts. And even back then in 08, you know, like I didn't have access to tons of high level guys. I mean, like with Hobson, like Hobson was my friend. I didn't even know how big of a deal he was until after that trip. I thought he was just a good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy. We were buddies. We talked, we text. And I told the story yesterday when I was on with Bruno when we went to that tournament that weekend, and we got out of the van and all those people were coming in. And I was like, oh, they love us, man. They love Americans. We're famous. And I kept walking, and they didn't follow me because they were there for Hobson. You know, I had no idea. But that was a good trip because, I mean, just seeing the culture, you know, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu lifestyle as far as how they view it down there and what it means to them and how it affects them as a people group. Like, that's really what, you know, affected me the most, was like it defined their lives. And I think that's when it started defining mine, was after that trip for sure. Yeah,
no, that was cool. It's funny to think of you as a blue belt. You know, it's crazy at that first trip.
Oh man, yeah. Oh yeah, I was just a baby blue. I've got that picture too of because whenever we were all we were training with Tony, yeah, there it is. Yeah, when we were training with Tony, because he, you know, he had his weeping style patch on, and I remember I was like, weeping style patch, you know, and I remember he wrist locked that guy, and like wrist locked him. Yeah, he wrist locked him pretty good. Now, granted, I mean, this dude deserved it. There, can you see that? Can you see that picture
awesome.
on your side?
That's
Yeah,
an awesome pic,
yeah,
right
because I remember seeing that weeping style patch, and I was all like, oh man, you know what, you know, okay, what's up with that? And then that guy kind of jumped on him, and man, he popped that wrist lock. Oh, that was solid. But you know, I mean, you jump on a guy that's got a bunch of stuff, bunch of rank, like, you know, it was old school, but
yeah,
that was a good time.
yeah. It's careful what you ask for. You might just get it. Tony's he ain't scared. You know, I mean,
I remember that guy grabbed him by the gi, and he was all like, you know, show me what you know, something that was like, let's
what
go.
You got, big boy.
And he was like,
that
oh man, I was like, oh, yep, okay, lesson learned. You remember Cheetah from that trip?
Oh yeah, I'll never forget him.
Man, he's so technical, such a good jiu-jitsu guy, black belt. That just, his technique was so good. I mean, but all those guys, I mean, with Hobson and Cheetah and Tony and just all the black belts at the academy, and I mean, it was, yeah, that was just such good training. But that was just such a pivotal point for me because, you know, our relationship grew on that one. You know, international travel just kind of does that because, I mean, we had a lot of road time for the previous few years, you know, and the international travel always kind of, you know, that's a different deal. But yeah, that really was my turning point for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specifically, because just, I don't know, it's hard to describe. And when we take people to Brazil, I always try to explain that to them, and then afterwards they get it, where they're like, man, I see what you're saying, but it's just hard to articulate it before people go.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the whole thing. Like our Brazil trip in June, man, I'm just praying that things kind of calm down and all that, because we got a good group. A lot of people want to go. Diajone and Tony and all the guys are ready and excited. So, you know, fingers crossed, I think we're going to be okay, but you know, we'll see.
Well, I've been going Masio almost 15 years now. And that, and having developed, and you've been with me so many times. I mean, we've been doing this trip so many times together, and we've developed up relationships, and it's nice to get in and you get a different look on Brazilian culture and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's different in Masio than it is in Rio Sao Paulo, because there's so much more metropolitan areas, and Masio's a big city. I mean, there's you know,
but it's not an American tourist city.
No,
it's like
not.
A Brazilian tourist city.
It is a Brazilian tourist city. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's different, and they don't get the visitors there. So we're, you know, it's something that's different for them. They look forward to seeing us come down. We, you know, and it's really cool. You know, we've had Danilo has come up, Diajone's son. Danilo came up, spent time, you know, at all our gyms. You know, stayed with Johnny Wester there at Gravitas, and
he's actually going to jump on with us next week. I hit him up, you know, I was talking to him. He's going to jump on us with next week, and
good. Oh yeah, and
he's so good.
You know, oh yeah, that we've had. It's just interesting, you know, to kind of have that connection, because Paulo Ribeiro, who came up, spent time with me. He was out of that gym. Danilo's come up. You know, I just had Tony's daughter in town back in October. She came up, and we took her to Disney World, and
Yeah,
had
it's
her
extended
around. So,
family. It's extended family for sure, because you're just doing life together. And even though we're a continent apart, across the water and all that, I mean, it's just still just keeping up with everybody on social media and going back to see them. I mean, it's like a family reunion, except you do get to choke everybody,
yeah, yeah.
or at least try to. You get to try to.
They were, it's like they were so nice until they said go.
Yeah, when the bell rang, like
Bell
suddenly I
rang, and
was
it
like,
got to be
"Are we
really
not
serious.
friends?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Oh
it
man.
is a good time, and it's a great peek into that jiu-jitsu, and it's
Yeah.
interesting, to have those family connections, and
Yeah.
I feel blessed. I'm in at this stage. I've trained with so many people, and I've just like you have. We've got connections, and we could go anywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
lots of people. If you said, "Hey, I want to do a camp, and I'm going to bring," you know, 14, 15, 16 of my closest buddies with me. I mean, people start lining up.
Yeah.
But I keep going back there because I know. I mean, I know these guys. I know their level of technique. I know that their level of care,
Yeah.
that what they're going to be able to do for us. They've produced, champions, and
Yeah, they
they're
got some real talent. And I love their female talent, with Bianca there and some of the girls, like, man, they got some animals
oh
that
yeah.
are just
Well, Bianca being not only a world jiu-jitsu champion, but a world surfing champion. I mean, she's just a phenomenal
and
athlete.
didn't she was involved in the Olympics, right? Not as a participant, but
She was a torch. She ran. She was one of the torch runners.
how cool
So
is that, man? Like,
yeah,
I mean, hanging out with a torch runner is like, I ran the torch to the Brazilian Olympics, like that was so cool.
yeah,
Man,
yeah.
it's awesome.
No, she just great, great, great people. I,
Yeah.
that definitely good folks. So yeah, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that they're weathering the storm down there. That being up in the north, I don't think they're going to get hammered as hard as
Yeah.
Rio or
Yeah,
Sao
they're not
Paulo.
as much of a hub. Yeah, they're not as much of a hub. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, because man, I definitely miss everybody, and we only get to see them every couple of years, so it
Well,
definitely would be a good trip.
delay is not denial. I mean, right
Yeah,
now nobody knows what's going on, and that's the
yeah,
thing. I mean, we're doing this. Uh, Everybody, it's just a strange time in the world, not just in
yeah,
Arkansas, but absolutely the world. And so, staying safe, staying healthy, but staying in shape. I was in the gym this morning and did my pull up, push up, hanging ab
yeah,
raise routine. I'm maintaining flexibility. I'm banging on the bags and doing solo drills. We got to stay in shape.
yeah,
And I mean, one of the things to fight this disease is that you got to stay healthy. And
yeah,
so, you know, just being away from the gym doesn't mean being away from health and fitness. And so
yeah,
by being able to get online, check out, we've got, on our Team LDMA page, with your Inferno pages, we're putting up,
yeah,
drills, we're putting up, training stuff, things that you can do at home. And, I'm fortunate because just like you, I mean, I have the key to this place, so I can be closed,
it
but I can
helps.
still,
Yeah,
I
yeah, I
still get
caught a
to
workout
me in.
yesterday, and and I needed it, man. I really needed it, because you just forget how physical you are, just when you're not doing it a lot. Because even lately with the gym's been busy, my volume's definitely not, at fight level competitive, trying to be, world champion or anything, but just a little change in the schedule and the disruption, and just not getting to physically do what you usually do, it just affects you, emotionally too. And that's where, like with all of the students in the team, is just trying to keep everybody engaged, because everybody's watching technique and they're tired. Like, there's technique everywhere, but sometimes you got to scratch a different itch, where we got, like, Eddie's been posting different cardio workouts. And I think doing this helps, just so people can, catch up on the history. Because usually we're so busy trying to train and make the technique better, they miss out on a lot of these stories, of just
Yeah.
like where it all came from.
Well,
So
yeah, these are normally the stories that are told around dinner and
yeah,
various cold adult beverage, and
yep, absolutely.
people get a little loose and start sharing the war stories and the tales
Yeah,
of daring do. But it is part of it, I mean,
yeah,
and it's part of the culture of martial arts, and it's nice when we can all get together. But this too shall pass, and
yeah,
taking care of yourself physically. I'm, like volume, that I mean, when you go from teaching I mean, we start running classes at 6 o'clock in the morning. We go until 9 o'clock at night. And the only way I can do that is to do that. I mean, and so if I miss, the older you get, the faster it goes away. So, I'm having to try to make sure that I'm working out 2 and 3 times a day, or when we fire back up again, I'm going to be miserable. So I don't want to, I don't want to risk those injuries. But one of the things that I think is, looking for a silver lining, people that have had little nagging training injuries that they hadn't taken care of, this is a chance to let, microscopic tears and lesions heal. I really encourage people to do tomorrow, in fact, plan on doing a little bit of a stretching video, talk about, flexibility, because right now when your training volume's not high and you're not as sore, working on flexibility is really going to be important. It's a good time to maybe push that aspect of your training, which a lot of times get the short sheet. Everybody knows strength, everybody knows cardiovascular, and they pay lip service to stretching, but they don't really invest the time to really stretch out. So
I've actually been able to get back on, I've been getting back on my stretching routine the last couple of weeks just because everything's been crazy. So, it's been helping. And like you said, people to push you. Like, that's one thing I'm so thankful for at the gym is, like, I got so many guys that just, they understand my role and it's changing, it's like as the team grows, and like they always push me, and make mat time for me. So like we'll go up, whenever it's before class, after class, or an afternoon or a weekend sometimes, and just, help me get more work. And then right now, like, I'm starving for that, but I've been doing a lot more of my flexibility, because that's one thing, like, you've always, focused on so much, because it's like, if the body doesn't have the range of motion and you add resistance, injury is going to happen. And I mean, because that's one thing, like, you have always done a really good job of, is you've always approached things from like an athletic physiological approach first. It was like, man, if you don't have wheels on the car, it's not going to roll. Then you'd be like, okay, we got wheels on the car. Now let's make sure there's gas in the tank. And then once there's gas in the tank, then it was like, okay, now let's look at our strategy and tactics for steering this thing. And I feel like it just, now it seems so common, but I can remember you talking about, and we'll get into this when we talk more striking, but I can remember you talking about ideas and theories of athletically based movement and just how it correlates to martial arts and chaining before I was hearing that anywhere, before I could hear much about that anywhere. And now, I mean, it's like people are just getting smarter and smarter and smarter. But, and when we get into striking, it'll make more sense because I got more specific examples. But that's one thing you have always touted is just like that synergy of not only just martial arts, but just physical training. And
that's how, because I've had people go, well, how can you be a 9th degree in this, 8th degree, 7th degree, 7th degree, blah, 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 and all these different ranks. And it's like, how do you keep it straight? And after a little bit, it's kind of the old Bruce Lee line, repose in the nothingness. Dude, you got to train. And when you have that format of hardware and software so that you can have an integration, when you know how to, because not everything runs, I mean, you look for, I've always been drawn to combat efficacy. So, Thai boxing, kickboxing, boxing, BJJ, wrestling, core arts that, and I mean, I've trained with judo guys. I've trained with sambo guys, and they all have valuable stuff for wrestling. Gokar sambo, but he was also an Olympic level judo guy. So it's like when I talk about, hey, I kickbox, I'm saying I Western box. I do American kickboxing, international rules kickboxing, Thai boxing, Muay Boran, and Burmese, Lethwei, Bando stuff. And Dr. G was a huge influence to me. It was a mental.
Yeah, he was a legend for me when I was coming up in some of the other stuff I was training. And then when I met you, you were always dragging me on the road. And you're like, get in, we got to go to this thing. And, and then I was like, I saw this deal. It's like Dr. G. And I was like, is this the Dr. G? And you're like, yeah, we've been training here for this long. We're going to get together. Because we went down like before class or something. You had arranged a workout with him. And I'm like training with one of my heroes, and it's just you're just like, it's another day at the office. Get this one done because we got another session in about an hour, with somebody else. And I was just like, this is awesome.
Yeah. Well, and dude, like, it's when you get those opportunities, you seize them, seize opportunity, and it becomes so important. But then being able to integrate all of that so that it's smooth and it became really apparent really, really fast. I wanted to have a platform, but people didn't take care. If you don't take care of your body, you're not going to be able to take care of your technique. And then having had, I've been injured, to the point where I wrote a book about it, but I'm still in the gym, and I'm still working I'm still on the mat. And as the years go by, there's no doubt, it's that slippery slope. You're not playing like what I was able to do, in my 20s and 30s, and then what you can do in your 40s and 50s and now, and beyond. But I look at what Bill Wallace is doing. Just before the nation got locked down, I was in North Carolina teaching a seminar on the East Coast with Bill, and the guy that worked out and did my pull-up routine. So we did 5 wide grip pull-ups, strict form. Then we did on the chain, suspended like rings, off the ground, because you're really having to stabilize. 5 push-ups, 5 hanging ab raises. Then we did 6, then we did 7, then we did 8. At 9, we put on a 23-pound weight vest and did 9 pull-ups, push-ups. And then we took the weight vest off and put a 15-pound med ball between our legs and did hanging ab raises with the med ball. Then we did 10, and then we did 15. Mr. Perry is 82 years old, and he did that with me. Now, I'm spotting him on the pull-ups his numbers on the last set. But still, he was in the gym doing that at 82 years old. So impressive.
The body can perform. It just changes the way in which it performs. You got to do the maintenance.
But that consistency, maintaining. The only time I've come out of the house is to come to the gym. I'm trying to really be anal about the whole social distancing thing. Mr. Perry is the only time he's come out of the house is to come down, and get that workout in. So being very, very careful, about not, and I'm doing, wearing the rubber gloves when I go if I had to buy food, I'm wearing rubber gloves. I'm sanitizing like a fiend.
Better safe than sorry. It's like if we're going to be in it, we might as well jump all in it and just go along with it.
Well, I feel like that's important. I'm not, trying to explain to my kids, hey, look, I don't want you going over your friend's house. Well, can I go? No, you can't. Because if we don't, it's trying to be as careful as you can, and yet, there's a little bit of normalcy that still has to exist. I'm going to try to get, a little bit of a workout in, and I'm going to try to maintain, some physicality, and, I want to help out. I can't have everybody coming in through the gym, but I can have a person come in from time to time. So we're trying to maintain our fitness, and yet, abide by the new social norms.
I'm just hoping for it to pass soon, but I appreciate you taking some time, and we're going to do more, because we still got to talk about striking and MMA and some other stuff. Because like I was telling Hula, I was like, gosh, man, me and Drink could probably go on for days with all the stories and stuff. So, we'll keep it on jiu-jitsu. Appreciate you making time for us. And, everybody watching, I'll upload this. It'll be in the LDMA group, and it'll be in the BJJ group, and it'll be better quality than what my little Facebook Live is doing with the phone. But we had to find a way. I wanted everybody to see kind of as we chat and talk. But I'll be definitely getting with you, and we'll schedule another one. And I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Well, thank you very much, brother. Appreciate your effort, and I'll look forward to talking to you again soon.